Hello everyone! The movie I wanted to review last week that didn't show up at the library in time didn't show up this week either. Ah! So I was like, okay, well, let's pivot. I could go see Sound of Freedom. I've been wanting to see that, and then I could talk about that instead. But that hasn't panned out either so far. So, what is this, plan C? Let's talk about the Wasp Woman, because I've been meaning to tackle it. I think I've referred to it a few times in other videos in the last year or two, and it's on YouTube, it's short, I've seen it before, so it wasn't too hard to come up with a video on the fly. Oh, on the fly, that's kind of a pun. Produced and directed by Roger Corman, 1959's The Wasp Woman, also known as Insect Woman, stars Susan Cabot as Janice Starlin, the founder, CEO, and longtime face of a cosmetics company that's starting to lose business. In an effort to turn things around, she makes a deal with a kooky doctor who's been experimenting with wasps to create a de-aging serum. Janice eagerly volunteers to be his first human test subject, but when progress is slow, she takes a chance on a more potent solution, unaware that at night there emerges a crazy side effect. This is one of those classic horror movies that people seem to view one of two ways. It's a campy B-movie with a hilariously bad monster design, or it's a decent effort that manages to tell its story quite effectively despite its limitations. I lean toward the latter sentiment, although I don't enjoy this Corman film as much as I did Not of This Earth, which I reviewed a couple months ago, and it doesn't have the offbeat charm of Corman's more famous films from this period. I do like it, but it's kind of slow in spots. There are some humorous lines that work, but I think it might have been better either with more comic relief or none at all. And you can find it scary if you let yourself get really into it, but it takes an awful lot of effort not to laugh when the monster is revealed. It's not the only film of its kind. For starters, the design of the wasp head strikes me as a cheap knockoff of the head in The Fly, which came out the year before. But there are a couple other, lesser-known films it reminded me of thematically. One is The Leech Woman, which I just talked about a couple weeks ago in my What Else I Saw in June video. That's another movie involving the unscrupulous scientific pursuit of a fountain of youth, which causes a female test subject to turn into a monster, though in that case it's figurative. And the focus on aging and beauty and feminine insecurity, plus all the talk of cosmetics, reminded me of The Hypnotic Eye, in which pretty young women are coerced into mutilating themselves, often in the middle of their skincare routine. I've reviewed all of these movies. All of them are ones that I think are better than most people give them credit for, and I think it's interesting that these three came out within months of each other. I'm not drawing any implications from that, I just think it's interesting. Regarding the main character, Janice Starlin, I'm unsure how sympathetic she was intended to be. She's vulnerable and insecure. I commend her bravery in offering herself as a test subject, selfish though her motivation may be, and as the experiment begins to get out of control, she ends up in kind of a Larry Talbot position, desperate to find some answer or antidote that will keep her wild alter ego from committing murder after hours. She's not exactly the most likable person, though. We're introduced to her at a board meeting where she is testy with each of her employees in a cold, polite way. And it's amusing, to me at least, that here she is lamenting that she's no longer in the first blush of youth, no longer the appropriate face to advertise her company's beauty products, when she looks perfectly fine. What is she, 35? Okay, I looked it up and did some quick math, and Susan Cabot was only 32 here. That is not old. To make her seem older, though, they've given her an unflattering, dowdy hairstyle, hidden her behind thick glasses, and slapped a ton of makeup on her face to create pronounced forehead lines, folds, and bags under her eyes. She still doesn't look old. She just looks tired and cynical. But no, she goes for the experimental Queen Wasp jelly rejuvenation enzyme stuff, injecting it into herself with this huge syringe. And when she shows up the next day, she's radiant. Not just looking younger, but full of energy and smiling so much that her employees don't know what to do. Susan Cabot does very well here, more or less carrying the picture, even when she has to do some absurd things. I wondered if there was anything else I had seen her in, so I looked her up, and as I've been making videos over the years, I've encountered some shocking and sad stories about the people behind and in front of the camera in these old movies. Sometimes you read something about someone and you feel like, oh man, I wish I didn't know that. Few stories are as tragic as that of Susan Cabot, whose life was a difficult one from beginning to end. Her father walked out, her mother was institutionalized, and in various foster homes she suffered horrible abuse. She broke free and became an actress, and her career had a promising start. She was in a number of westerns in the late 40s and early 50s, then she did some theater work for a while, before returning to Hollywood to make some movies with Roger Corman. The Wasp Woman ended up being her final feature film, and it's the role she is most known for, thanks to the loyalty and enthusiasm of the sci-fi horror community. She had one child, a son who was born out of wedlock and with dwarfism. Following her departure from acting, she was able to live comfortably on real estate and an old car restoration business, and she received monthly payments to help raise her son. But she had a lifelong battle with depression and mental illness, and over time she became a hoarder and a recluse. Then, in 1986, she was bludgeoned to death by her son, who testified that in the night she suddenly started attacking him, and he struck her with a weightlifting bar in self-defense. He was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Like I said, it's a tragic story. I don't know how she felt about the quality of her work with Corman. The Wasp Woman probably wasn't the most prestigious moment of her career, and the job included some awful, grueling, even painful moments. But in retrospect, I do think it's nice that it secured her this iconic place in film history and gave her a legacy beyond her distressing and untimely demise. Now, this being a Roger Corman production from the earlier end of his career, you can safely assume it was made on a shoestring budget. Its frugality is evident in multiple places. In the de-aging transformation sequences, for example, they obviously just swapped out one animal for a totally different species. The guinea pig transforms into a rat, and I'm not convinced these dogs are the same breed. It's already a short movie, yet there are a couple montages that just scream filler, and they're especially tedious because they repeat shots that we just saw. And there's this one part where a detective is hired, and we suddenly switch over to this footage that was clearly shot at another time, and I don't think it's even in the same city, because this does not look like Manhattan. I figured these shots must have been recycled from another Corman movie, but it turns out the version I watched on YouTube was the TV release, and the internet tells me that this random footage, along with the kind of boring opening with Dr. Zinthrup chattering to his wasps and getting admonished for not doing his job, was added in 1964 for the film's debut on television. In my opinion, it didn't need any of this material. And then, yeah, there's that wacky wasp head and the fuzzy mittens, which could be the low point or the high point of the film, depending on your perspective. Much as I'm inclined to laugh at it now, as an adult, and someone who's been around the creature feature block more than a few times, I can say with utmost confidence that if I had seen this movie as a little kid, I would have been terrified. Another highlight is the collection of side characters. We've got the chatty office ladies, including a receptionist who changes from her tough New Yorker accent to a mild professional tone to answer the phone. William Rourke plays an advertising exec who always has a pipe either in his mouth or in his hand. It's comically conspicuous because it ends up being a plot point. Corman himself makes a quick cameo as an ER doctor. And there's the bumbling night watchman who misses all the noise of the murder that just occurred because he was fiddling with his radio. That's a nice bit of macabre juxtaposition. Someone is killed, and then we immediately cut to this guy, and quirky xylophone music plays in the background. For Corman fans, that music should be familiar. It's the same Fred Katz score that he originally brought to Corman for A Bucket of Blood, and then recycled in 6 other films. Lest you consider it sexist or misogynistic, that a movie about a woman struggling with her age and declining beauty who takes drastic and foolhardy measures to regain it was made by men. The screenplay was written by Leo Gordon, but based on a story by Quinta Zertuche, who is a woman. She was then in her late 20s, and she penned a couple other Corman films from that era. Her husband, director Daniel Haller, was also a member of Corman's team, serving as art director on many of his films, including this one. Leo Gordon, by the way, is more known for being a character actor. He has 201 acting credits spanning almost 50 years. But he also has 34 writing credits, and those are divided pretty evenly between TV episodes and old Corman films. His wife, Lynn Cartwright, is the one playing the sassy receptionist. There are 2 more serious notions I feel the film conveys, whether it was intentional or not, and they aren't diametrically opposed. First is the disturbing extremes to which some women, and men also, may go to hold on to their youth, driven perhaps by the pressures of societal demands and expectations, and the harsh reality that in certain professions, the minute you aren't young and hot anymore, you're passed over, you're shown the door, you're put on the shelf. And second is the simple moral, don't get fixated on the fact that you're getting older. It happens to everybody, and it's bound to happen to you. So accept that. Don't bemoan the changes, because being miserable and anxious about it, or cranky, will probably only make it worse. This is me saying this, not the movie, but I feel that if you carry yourself with confidence, and embrace your increasing age with dignity and grace, you'll be much better off. For all you know, some of the natural changes may end up being improvements. There are a lot of late bloomers out there, and people who end up being far more attractive in their 30s, 40s, and 50s than they were in their 20s. And hopefully, with age, comes wisdom. So don't freak out because you enter a new decade, or a new age demographic, a new age bracket, or your hair is graying, or you've spotted a wrinkle, or certain body parts are sagging. It's okay. That's not what life is all about, and anybody who makes you feel bad about getting older is in the wrong, and you shouldn't listen to them, and you definitely don't want to do anything drastic to become young again. There's no telling when that treatment, or surgery, or whatever may backfire. I hope you enjoyed this review of The Wasp Woman. If you have seen the film, go ahead and share your thoughts on it in the comments below. I look forward to reading what everybody has to say, and stay tuned for whatever I end up reviewing next week. Thanks for watching.